I survived 3 tours in Afghanistan, but nothing prepared me for what waited in my own dining room that September evening. My wife Emma had organized a welcome home dinner, and sitting across from me at my table was Marcus Webb, my former college roommate, my best man, the guy I'd trusted with everything. What I didn't know yet was that he'd been trusted with a lot more than I'd intended. The deployment had been brutal. 14 months in Helmand Province, leading a platoon through terrain where every step could be your last. I'd written Emma every week, called when I could, sent money home religiously. She'd written back about her new job at the marketing firm, how Marcus had been helping her with the lawn and the car troubles. What a good friend he'd been while I was gone. I'd been grateful. The table was set like something from a magazine. White tablecloth, candles, the good china we'd gotten as wedding gifts 6 years ago. Emma had made my favorite, pot roast with roasted vegetables. Marcus brought wine, expensive stuff, and kept refilling Emma's glass with a familiarity that made my jaw tighten. But I told myself I was being paranoid, that 15 months of hypervigilance in a war zone had rewired my threat assessment. To Jake, Marcus raised his glass. "Welcome home, brother. Brother." The word tasted wrong. Emma's laugh was too bright, too nervous. She kept touching her necklace, a gold pendant I didn't recognize. When I asked about it, she said it was from her sister. Her eyes didn't meet mine when she said it. I'd spent a year and a half reading body language to stay alive, watching for tells that someone was about to detonate an IED or pull a weapon. Emma's tells were everywhere. The way she angled her body toward Marcus, how her smile reached her eyes when she looked at him but didn't quite make it when she turned to me. The inside jokes I wasn't part of. Marcus dominated the conversation, talking about his promotion to senior partner at his law firm, the new Audi outside that he'd parked in my driveway, the condo in Boulder he'd just bought. He made a point of mentioning he was helping Emma with some legal matters, which was news to me. "What legal matters?" I asked, setting down my fork. The silence stretched for 3 seconds too long. In combat, 3 seconds is an eternity. It's the difference between spotting an ambush and walking into one. "Just some boring paperwork stuff," Emma said quickly, her voice pitched higher than normal. "Refinancing the house, updating our will. Marcus offered to help since you were deployed, and I couldn't reach you easily. Our house. The one I'd been paying the mortgage on for 6 years, including while getting shot at in Kandahar. The one I dreamed about in 100-degree heat while pulling security on night watch." After dinner, Marcus excused himself to take a call in the living room. Emma went to the kitchen, and I could hear her loading the dishwasher with more force than necessary. I sat at the table, that familiar combat alertness settling over me, the feeling that told me something was very wrong, even if I couldn't see the threat yet. Marcus's phone was on the table, screen down next to his wine glass. I don't make excuses for what I did next. In war, you act on instinct, or you die. I picked it up. The screen lit up with a message preview from E. "Can't wait until he leaves for his brother's place tomorrow. Miss you already. Last night was perfect." My hand stayed steady. Years of training does that. But something cold and sharp settled in my chest, right where my body armor plate used to sit. I set the phone back exactly as I'd found it. Same angle, same position. When Marcus returned, tucking his own phone into his pocket, I smiled and thanked him for coming. When Emma kissed my cheek goodnight after Marcus left, I held her a moment longer than necessary, memorizing the feel of it, knowing everything was about to change. At 3 in the morning, I lay in bed next to my wife, staring at the ceiling of the bedroom I'd dreamed about in a desert on the other side of the world. Emma's breathing was even, peaceful. She'd fallen asleep quickly, like she always did, while I lay there calculating. I thought about all the nights I'd held my rifle in 100-degree heat, telling myself I was protecting her, protecting our life together, protecting something worth fighting for. I'd been protecting a lie. I didn't confront them. Not yet. You don't survive 3 combat deployments by making emotional decisions. You gather intelligence. You assess the situation. You plan your response. You wait for the right moment to strike. The next morning, I told Emma I was driving to Colorado Springs to visit my brother Tommy for a few days. She seemed relieved, which told me everything I needed to know. Her shoulders actually relaxed when I said it. She kissed me goodbye at the door, told me to drive safe, said she'd miss me. The lies came so easily to her now. I drove to Tommy's place, a small ranch house 30 miles outside the city where he trained horses and tried to forget his own 2 tours in Iraq. He'd gotten out a year before me, taken his savings, and bought 5 acres with a barn and a house that needed work. "You look like hell," Tommy said when I showed up at his door at dawn, my duffel bag over my shoulder. "Need to borrow your truck and your guest room for a few days." He grabbed his keys without asking why. "That's what combat does to you. It teaches you when questions are necessary and when they're not. When a brother shows up at your door looking like he's been hit by an IED, you don't ask for an after-action report. You just help." I spent the next 3 days building a case like I was planning a mission. I hired a private investigator, a former Marine MP named Rita Chen, who specialized in infidelity cases and had worked with a lot of military families. I gave her everything: Emma's schedule, Marcus's patterns, my suspicions, the text message I'd seen. "Most guys wait until they're absolutely sure," Rita said, studying me across her desk in a small office in Denver. "You're already sure, aren't you?" "I need documentation for the divorce," I said. "Virginia's a fault state. Adultery matters in court. I need evidence that will hold up." She nodded slowly. "Marines. Always planning the mission." "That's how you survive," Rita called me 48 hours later. "You might want to sit down for this, Jake." The photographs showed Emma and Marcus entering his Boulder condo together at 2 in the afternoon on a Wednesday. Emma's silver Honda parked in his garage overnight on 3 separate occasions in the past month alone. Restaurant receipts showing romantic dinners for 2 at expensive places in Denver, while I was deployed, charged to Marcus's credit card. Hotel stays in Vail and Aspen, luxury resorts, couples spa packages. But the financial records were worse. While I'd been sending home my combat pay plus hazard bonuses, roughly $70,000 over the deployment, Emma had been systematically draining our joint account. The house refinancing Marcus had helped with? She'd pulled $40,000 in equity. The money had gone into a new account with only her name on it, one I'd never known existed. I sat in Tommy's kitchen, spreading the evidence across his table like mission documents before a briefing. "She was planning to leave you," Tommy said quietly, standing behind me, looking at the papers and photographs. "Setting herself up for it while you were downrange. While I was getting shot at." The words came out flat, emotionless. While I was leading patrols through IED fields. While I was writing her letters about how much I missed her and couldn't wait to come home. "Yeah." Tommy poured us both bourbon, even though it was 11 in the morning. "While you were doing all that." I thought about all those letters I'd written, her complaints about being lonely, about how hard it was being a military wife, about needing emotional support. I'd written back apologizing for being gone, promising things would be better when I got home, sending extra money when I could scrape it together. Money she was saving to leave me with. My phone buzzed on the table. "Emma. Miss you. When are you coming home?" I stared at the message for a long moment, then set the phone down without responding. The woman who'd written that text didn't exist. Maybe she never had. Instead, I called my old platoon sergeant, Carlos Mendez, who'd retired to Denver after 22 years in the Corps and started a successful security consulting firm. I'd heard through the grapevine that his business was growing, that he was hiring veterans, that he was doing well. "Jake Mitchell," Carlos's voice boomed through the phone. "Heard you were back stateside. How's civilian life treating you, brother? Need a job and some advice. You got time to meet? For one of my Marines? Always. Come by the office tomorrow morning." Tommy watched me make the call, then make another one to a divorce lawyer named Janet Kowalski, who'd handled his divorce 3 years ago. "What are you thinking?" Tommy asked. "That I've been living her life for 6 years. Time to build my own." That night, I reviewed everything again in the guest room. The photos, The bank statements, the timeline, the pattern of deception that stretched back months, maybe longer. I thought about confrontation, about walking into that Boulder condo and catching them together, about the satisfaction of watching them scramble to explain. But that wasn't how you won. You won by being smarter, by being more disciplined, by refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing you break, by planning your moves 3 steps ahead while they were still reacting to the last one. I called Janet the next morning. She listened to everything, asked pointed questions, and made notes. "Adultery case in Virginia with this level of documentation?" Janet said. "That's a clean fight. She'll get nothing except maybe some temporary support, and even that's questionable given the financial fraud. How do you want to play this?" "I want to serve her while I'm at work somewhere she can't make a scene. I want to be moved out before she even knows I know, and I want her to understand exactly what she threw away." "That's strategic," Janet said. "I can work with strategic." Carlos Mendez offered me a position as senior security consultant before I'd even sat down in his office. The job paid $95,000 base plus performance bonuses, with clients ranging from tech companies to private estates to corporate executives who needed protection. "You led Marines in combat," Carlos said, leaning back in his chair in his downtown Denver office. "Teaching rich people how to not get kidnapped or compromised is easy mode compared to that. You understand threat assessment, strategic planning, and crisis management. That's exactly what our clients need." I took the job on the spot. I also took an apartment in Capitol Hill, a 1-bedroom with exposed brick walls and hardwood floors, and a view of downtown Denver. It cost half what the mortgage on the house had been. I furnished it with exactly what I needed, and nothing I didn't. A bed, a desk, a good coffee maker, and a pull-up bar in the doorway. No decorative pillows, no throw blankets that couldn't be thrown, no meaningless art on the walls. Just function, just purpose. Emma kept texting, asking when I was coming home, saying she missed me. I kept making excuses. I needed space to think. I was helping Tommy with something on the ranch. My transition back was harder than expected. All true, just not in the way she thought. 2 weeks after I'd discovered the affair, Janet served Emma with divorce papers at her office downtown. Adultery cited, with photographic evidence attached. Request for full return of marital funds she'd hidden. No alimony due to fault. Petition to sell the house and split remaining equity. Emma called 17 times in the first hour. I didn't answer. Marcus called too, his number flashing on my screen with "Best Man" still listed as the contact name. I blocked him. Tommy texted that afternoon. "She showed up here looking for you. Crying, panicking, saying it was all a misunderstanding. Didn't tell her anything. She left after an hour." Good. Let her panic. I'd panicked plenty during firefights while she'd been planning her exit strategy with my best friend. I threw myself into work with the same intensity I'd brought to combat operations. Carlos's firm was expanding rapidly, and I had skills that translated perfectly. Threat assessment, strategic planning, crisis management, leadership under pressure, staying calm when everyone else was losing their minds. Within a month, I was running my own team, training corporate executives in situational awareness and personal security. The divorce moved forward like a military operation. Emma's lawyer tried to argue that the refinancing money was for legitimate household expenses and that my deployment absences had contributed to the breakdown of the marriage, making me partially at fault. Janet demolished those arguments with bank records, showing luxury purchases and hotel stays while I was deployed. The judge was particularly unimpressed when Janet presented evidence that Emma had been spending money on romantic getaways while I was in a combat zone. "She's going to have to return $35,000, Janet told me after a hearing. The judge actually got angry when he saw the timeline. His son is Army. He did not appreciate what she did. I started working out again with religious intensity. The gym became my morning ritual, the weight room my therapy. I'd lost 15 pounds of muscle mass downrange from stress and irregular eating, and I wanted it back. 5 in the morning every day, before the sun came up, before the city woke up, before I had time to think about anything except the weight in my hands. Bench press, squats, deadlifts. The physical pain was honest, clean, something I could control and measure and improve. One morning, I ran into Elena Rodriguez at the gym, a former army medic who'd served near my unit in Afghanistan. We'd crossed paths a few times downrange but never really talked beyond quick greetings at the dining facility. "Jake Mitchell," she said, recognizing me on the rowing machine. "I heard you were back stateside. How are you adjusting?" We got coffee after the workout at a small place near the gym. She was working as a physician's assistant at the VA hospital now, helping other veterans transition back to civilian life. We talked about deployments, about the strange difficulty of coming home, about how nothing was quite what you expected when you got back. I didn't tell her about Emma. Not yet. But it felt good to talk to someone who understood what it meant to come back from a war zone and find out home wasn't what you'd left behind. Carlos pulled me aside one afternoon in late October. "You're doing exceptional work, Jake. I'm thinking about opening a second office in Colorado Springs. Interested in running it as managing partner?" "Seriously? You're a natural leader, you understand what our clients need, and you work harder than anyone I've ever seen. You're probably trying to outrun something, but that's none of my business." He wasn't wrong. By month 3, I had my own apartment fully set up the way I wanted it, a growing reputation in the security consulting world, and a routine that kept me focused and moving forward. The divorce was moving toward finalization. Emma had returned most of the money under court order. Marcus, I heard through mutual friends, was dealing with his own problems. The firm partners weren't thrilled about the affair with a client's wife, especially while that client was deployed serving the country. I didn't feel victorious, but I felt steady, like I'd found my footing again on solid ground. The Colorado Springs office opened in January, 6 months after I'd discovered the affair. Carlos made me full partner, 35% equity in the new location plus profit sharing. My first major client was a tech CEO worth about $200 million who'd received credible threats and needed comprehensive security overhaul for his family and properties. I built a team of 5, all veterans, 3 from Army Special Forces, 1 former Air Force pararescue, 1 Navy corpsman who'd done 6 deployments. We spoke the same language, understood the same principles of small unit leadership. My management style was direct, clear, and fair. The team responded immediately. By spring, we'd landed contracts with 3 more high-profile clients. Revenue exceeded first-year projections by 45%. Carlos called to congratulate me and suggested I start thinking about partnership in the entire company, not just the Springs office. The divorce finalized in March. Emma got nothing except her car and half the remaining equity in the house after paying back what she'd hidden. I bought her out, then sold the house entirely 2 weeks later to a young couple with a baby. I didn't want it anymore. It represented a life that had been built on lies and false promises. Elena and I had been seeing each other casually since Christmas. Nothing serious, just coffee after workouts, dinners when our schedules aligned, movies on quiet weekends. She knew about the divorce, the affair, all of it. I'd told her one night over dinner when she'd asked why I seemed so driven at the gym. She didn't judge, didn't offer platitudes, didn't try to fix anything, just listened. "You know what I appreciate about you," she said one evening over sushi in old Colorado City. "You don't pretend you're not hurt. You just refuse to let it define you or destroy what you're building." "I was a Marine," I said. "We adapt and overcome. It's not poetry, but it works. You're still a Marine. That doesn't stop just because you're not active duty anymore." She was right. Once a Marine, always a Marine. The values stuck with you: honor, courage, commitment, integrity. Emma and Marcus had lacked all 3. I wouldn't make that mistake again in who I trusted or how I built my life. I started mentoring younger veterans at the VA hospital, guys struggling with transition from military to civilian life. Elena had connected me with the program, and I found it helped me as much as it helped them. I could look these men in the eye and tell them honestly, yes, it's hard. Yes, people will disappoint you. Yes, you'll question everything you thought you knew, but you have skills, discipline, and resilience that most civilians don't understand. Use them. Build something. One veteran, a kid named Daniel, who'd done 1 tour in Syria with the Army, reminded me of myself at 24. Lost, angry, feeling like the world owed him something for his service. "The world doesn't owe you anything," I told him during one of our sessions. "But you owe yourself everything. You survived a war. You think a bad job interview or a difficult relationship is going to take you down after that?" He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Daniel ended up getting hired by my firm as a junior consultant 6 weeks later. Within 6 months, he was thriving, leading his own small team on a corporate security assessment. Tommy called in April. "Heard through the grapevine that Emma moved to California, Marin County north of San Francisco. Guess Marcus's firm had an opening out there, or maybe they made one for him. They still together?" "For now. Word is the partners basically gave him a choice. Relocate to the West Coast office or resign. He chose relocation. Reputation management, probably." I felt nothing hearing that. Emma and Marcus weren't my problem anymore. They were consequences of their own choices, living in one of the most expensive areas in the country where they knew no one and had no support system. Meanwhile, I was building something real in Colorado Springs. Carlos announced in May that I was now 40% partner in the full company, not just the Springs office. "You've earned it," he said over drinks at a steakhouse downtown. "You've tripled our growth rate, and your team's the best we've got. You lead like you're still in the core." "I am still in the core," I said, "just serving differently now." I bought a house in Manitou Springs that summer, a restored craftsman bungalow with mountain views and enough space for a proper home gym in the garage. I furnished it slowly, deliberately, with things I actually liked, not things that fit someone else's vision of what a home should be. Leather furniture, dark wood, minimalist design, function over decoration. Elena helped me pick out furniture one Saturday, walking through stores and making suggestions without pushing. "You know," she said, standing in my empty living room that afternoon, "this is the first time I've seen you really relaxed, not performing, not proving anything, just being." She was right. I was sleeping better, working out without the desperate edge I'd had before, actually enjoying my life instead of just surviving it day by day. I was having breakfast at a diner in downtown Colorado Springs on a Saturday morning when I ran into Mike Patterson, an old Marine buddy who'd served in my first deployment back in 2012. We hadn't talked in probably 4 years. "Jake, man, you look good. Life treating you well?" We caught up over coffee and eggs. He told me about his job in tech sales, his wife, his 2 kids. Then he mentioned something that caught my attention. "Hey, I saw your ex-wife Emma at some charity event in San Francisco last month. I was out there for work. She looked... Man, I don't know how to say this, but she looked miserable. Marcus was working the room, barely acknowledged her all night. And she just looked like she'd aged 10 years. I almost didn't recognize her." He didn't know about the affair, the divorce, any of the details. I didn't fill him in. It wasn't relevant anymore. "How about you?" Mike asked. "What are you up to these days?" I told him about the security firm, the partnership with Carlos, the Colorado Springs office. I mentioned the work with veterans, the mentoring program. I talked about Elena, though we still weren't putting labels on what we had. I described the new house, the plans to expand our corporate training division. "That's amazing," Mike said, shaking his head. "You really landed on your feet after getting out. A lot of guys struggle with the transition." I had landed on my feet. But it hadn't been luck. It had been discipline, strategic planning, and refusing to let betrayal turn me into something I wasn't. It had been choosing to build rather than destroy, to move forward rather than stay stuck. That evening, I met Elena at Red Rock Canyon Open Space for a sunset hike, something we'd started doing weekly when weather permitted. The sky was burning orange and purple over the red rocks, the mountains sharp against the horizon. "You seem different lately," Elena said as we walked. "Lighter somehow. Like you're not carrying something heavy anymore." I am different. Took a while to get here, but I'm different now. She knew the full story by now. The deployment, the affair, the discovery at the dinner, the divorce, the rebuild. She'd watched me go through all of it over the past year without trying to fix me or push me faster than I was ready to go. You know what the hardest part was? I said, watching the sun drop behind Pikes Peak. It wasn't the betrayal itself. It was realizing I'd been living someone else's idea of what my life should be. The house, the marriage, the conventional plan, none of it was really mine. I was living it because it was expected, not because I wanted it. And now? Now I'm building something that's actually mine. The firm, this house, the work with veterans, this life. Even this thing between us. It's all real, all deliberate, all chosen. Elena smiled and squeezed my hand. This is definitely real. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Janet, my divorce lawyer. Just wanted to let you know, you're officially done, she said. Final decree is signed and recorded. Emma's completely out of your life legally. No more ties. I thanked her and hung up. I was sitting in my home office looking at the mountains through the window, in a house I'd bought with money I'd earned, working at a company where I was an owner, living a life I'd deliberately and carefully chosen piece by piece. Emma and Marcus were somewhere in California, from what I'd heard. Still together but struggling from what Mike had said. Marcus's career had taken a permanent hit from the forced relocation and the professional ethics complaints that had followed him. Emma was working retail management, her marketing career derailed by the move and the scandal that had quietly followed them. I felt no satisfaction in their struggles. They were making their own choices and living with their own consequences, just like I was making mine. Their story wasn't mine anymore. Carlos called that afternoon with news that a major defense contractor wanted to discuss a partnership, our firm providing security training to their executives and high-value personnel worldwide. It was a 7-figure contract that would change everything. You did this, brother, Carlos said. Your reputation, your leadership, your vision for what we could build. This is all you. That Saturday, I hosted a barbecue at the new house. Tommy drove down with his girlfriend. Elena came early to help me set up the grill and prep food. Several guys from the firm showed up. My team had become more than just colleagues. Daniel, the young vet I'd hired and mentored, brought his girlfriend and a 6-pack of good beer. Standing on my back deck as the sun set, watching these people, my chosen family, I realized something I'd been too angry to see a year ago. Emma hadn't destroyed my life. She'd freed me from one I'd outgrown, one that had never really fit who I was becoming. I'd survived 3 combat deployments in Afghanistan. I'd survived an IED blast that killed 2 of my Marines and left me with ringing ears and nightmares. I'd survived firefights and ambushes and missions that should have ended badly but didn't because of training and luck and brothers who had my back. Surviving a bad marriage and a betrayal? That was just another mission. And like every mission I'd ever run, I'd completed it by refusing to quit, by adapting to the situation, by remembering who I was when everything else was stripped away. I was a Marine. I was a leader. I was a man who kept his word and lived by his values and took care of his people. Emma and Marcus could never take that away because they'd never given it to me in the first place. I'd built it myself through hard choices and discipline and integrity. Tommy raised his beer from across the deck. To new beginnings, brother. To building what actually matters, I countered, raising mine. Everyone drank to that. Later that night, after everyone had left and Elena was asleep in my bed, I stood on the deck alone, looking at the stars. Same stars I'd watched from a combat outpost in Helmand Province, wondering if I'd make it home, wondering what home even meant anymore. I'd made it home. Just not to the home I'd expected. I'd made it somewhere better. Somewhere real. Somewhere I'd built with my own hands from the ground up. If this story hit home, smash that like button. What was the biggest lesson here? Was it Jake's patience in gathering evidence before acting, his refusal to seek dramatic revenge, or his focus on building something better instead of destroying what betrayed him? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more stories about men rebuilding their lives after betrayal. You won't want to miss what's coming next.